The email notification popped up on my laptop screen at 11:47 p.m., an alert from a Google search I'd set up years ago for my own name. Vanity, maybe, or the peculiar modern anxiety of wanting to know what the internet thought of me. I clicked it without thinking, expecting another LinkedIn mention or perhaps a bylined article from my publishing house. Instead, I found my own death. Evelyn Marie Hart, 29, passed away unexpectedly on October 15th following a tragic hiking accident in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. She is survived by her twin sister Lila, her mother Margaret, and her fiancé Nathan Cole. Evelyn was a beloved editor at Meridian Publishing and will be remembered for her kindness, dedication, and unwavering loyalty to those she loved. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The cursor blinked against the white screen. My hands had gone numb. I read it again, slower this time, noting the details that made my skin crawl. The White Mountains, where Lila and I used to camp as teenagers. Meridian Publishing. My actual job. Nathan Cole. My actual fiancé, whose ring still sat on my finger as I stared at the screen. Services will be held at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church on October 20th at 2 p.m. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. October 20th. That was in 3 days. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara Dawson, my best friend since childhood. Evelyn, please call me. I just saw something online and I'm freaking out. I called her immediately, my fingers shaking as I dialed. Clara, it's me. Oh, thank God, her voice cracked with relief. Evelyn, there's an obituary online with your name. It says you died hiking. It says there's going to be a memorial service this week. I know, I just found it. A pause. This is Lila, isn't it? The question hung between us like smoke. Clara had never trusted my twin sister, not since we were kids. She'd always said Lila had hungry eyes, always watching what others had, always calculating how to take it. But this seemed impossible, even for Lila. I don't know, I whispered. How could she? Who would believe? Evelyn. Clara's voice turned sharp. When's the last time you talked to your family? I thought about it. 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. Mom had called about Thanksgiving plans. Nathan had been working late every night on the Morrison project. I'd been buried in manuscripts, working from my apartment, barely leaving except for groceries. A few weeks, I admitted. And when's the last time you posted on social media or went out where people could see you? The realization crept over me like ice water. I'd been living quietly, almost invisibly for months, working from home, ordering takeout, seeing only Nathan and Clara regularly. If someone wanted to erase me, I'd made it remarkably easy. Clara, what if people actually think I'm dead? Then we're going to that memorial service, she said fiercely, and you're going to show them otherwise. I spent the next 2 hours scrolling to every corner of the internet. The obituary had been shared on Facebook dozens of times. Coworkers from Meridian had left comments about how much they'd miss me. Nathan's mother had written a long post about what a wonderful daughter-in-law I would have been. The local newspaper had picked up the story. But the most chilling discovery was a GoFundMe page created by someone claiming to be my sister, raising money for Evelyn's final expenses and supporting her heartbroken family during this difficult time. It had already raised $8,000. At 2 a.m., I drove to Nathan's apartment. His car was in the parking lot, but when I knocked, no one answered. I used my key, the one he'd given me 6 months ago with such ceremony, and found the place empty. The bed was unmade, his work clothes scattered on the floor, but no Nathan. I sat on his couch and called his phone. It went straight to voicemail. That's when I noticed the flowers on his kitchen counter. White lilies and roses arranged in a glass vase with a small card. I opened it with trembling fingers. Nathan, we're here for you during this difficult time, with love and sympathy. the Meridian Publishing family. Sympathy flowers for my death in my fiancé's apartment. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling with possibilities. Maybe this was some kind of elaborate mistake. Maybe someone had confused me with someone else. Maybe there was another Evelyn Hart who really had died, and somehow our information had gotten mixed up.
But deep down, in the place where twin intuition lived, I knew better. This had Lila written all over it. The dramatic gesture, the attention, the way she'd positioned herself at the center of everyone's grief and sympathy. She'd always been jealous of my stability, my relationship with Nathan, my job at the publishing house she'd applied to but never gotten. But faking my death? That was beyond even her usual manipulations. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the obituary on my laptop screen. In 3 days, people who loved me would gather to mourn my passing. They'd share stories about my life, cry over my loss, and comfort each other in their grief. And I would be there to see it all. The question was, what would I find when I arrived? St. Andrew's Episcopal Church looked exactly as it had when I was confirmed there at 14, its gray stone walls and stained glass windows catching the afternoon light. Cars filled the parking lot and lined the street beyond. I'd never seen so many people gathered for anything involving my family. I parked 3 blocks away and walked, my heart hammering against my ribs. Clara had insisted on coming with me, but I'd refused. This moment needed to be mine alone, the moment when I stepped back into my own life. The church was packed. I slipped in through the side door and stood in the back, behind a pillar where I could see without being seen. Nearly every pew was full. I recognized faces from work, from college, from the coffee shop where I bought my morning latte. All of them dressed in black, all of them here to mourn me. Father Michael stood at the pulpit, his usually cheerful face solemn with grief. We gather today to celebrate the life of Evelyn Marie Hart, a young woman taken from us far too soon. My legs felt weak. This was real. These people genuinely believed I was dead. Evelyn was the kind of person who made everyone around her feel valued, Father Michael continued. She had a gift for seeing the best in people, for bringing out their potential. She will be deeply missed by all who knew her. I scanned the front pews, looking for my family. My mother sat in the first row, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. She wore the black dress she'd bought for my grandmother's funeral, and her gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun that made her look older than her 53 years. Next to her sat Nathan, his face pale and drawn. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hand rested on the shoulder of the woman beside him, offering comfort. The woman beside him was me. Or rather, it was Lila, wearing my face and my grief like a costume. She had on the navy dress I'd bought for my birthday dinner with Nathan last month, the one that had been hanging in my closet 3 days ago. Her hair was styled the way I always wore mine to church, parted on the left with soft waves framing her face. She even had on my pearl earrings, the ones our grandmother had given me. But it was more than just the clothes and jewelry. She'd captured something deeper. My posture, the way I held my head when I was listening intently, even the gesture I made when pushing my hair behind my ear. Watching her, I felt like I was looking into a funhouse mirror, seeing a version of myself that was somehow both perfect and wrong. I'd like to invite Evelyn's sister Lila to share a few words, Father Michael said. Lila, wearing my identity like a second skin, rose gracefully and walked to the pulpit. The church fell silent. "Thank you all for being here today," she said, and even her voice sounded like mine, pitched slightly lower than her natural tone. Evelyn would have been so touched to see how many lives she impacted. I pressed my back against the pillar, dizzy with the surreal horror of it. She was delivering my own eulogy, speaking about me in the past tense while I stood 20 feet away. My sister was my best friend,
Lila continued, her voice breaking just slightly. We shared everything. Dreams, fears, inside jokes that no one else understood. Losing her feels like losing half of myself. A murmur of sympathy rippled through the congregation. Several people were crying openly. Nathan reached up from his seat and squeezed her hand. Evelyn always said that the best way to honor someone's memory is to live the kind of life that would make them proud. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to be the kind of person she was. Kind, generous, always putting others first. I'm going to try to live not just my own life, but the life she would have wanted to live too. The words hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just pretending to grieve me, she was claiming my future, promising to live the life I was supposed to have. In front of everyone I cared about, she was stealing not just my past, but my tomorrow. I couldn't breathe. The air in the church felt thick and suffocating. I needed to leave, to get outside, to...
The love of my life was supposed to marry my sister in June, Lila said, her eyes finding Nathan in the front row. Evelyn would have wanted us to find comfort in each other, to help each other heal. She wouldn't have wanted us to face this grief alone. Nathan's face crumpled with emotion. He mouthed something I couldn't make out, but Lila nodded as if she understood. That's when I stepped forward. She wouldn't have wanted you to lie about her death either. My voice cut through the church like a blade. Every head turned toward me, and the silence that followed was so complete I could hear the old buildings settling around us. Gasps echoed off the stone walls. Someone screamed. A woman in the middle pew fainted and had to be caught by the man next to her. I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps unnaturally loud against the marble floor. People stared at me as if I were an apparition, their faces cycling through shock, confusion, and dawning recognition. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice stronger now. "Thank you for coming to my memorial service. As you can see, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." Lila stood frozen at the pulpit, her face pale as paper. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something wild and desperate in her eyes. Then she recovered, transforming her expression into one of joyful shock. "Evelyn!" she cried, rushing down from the pulpit toward me. "Oh my God, you're alive! We thought you were dead. When you didn't come home from your hike, when we found your car abandoned?" She threw her arms around me, and for a brief moment we stood there looking like the loving twins we'd once been. But as she hugged me, she whispered in my ear, her voice so low only I could hear, "You should have stayed dead." The church had emptied in chaos. Some people fled as if they'd seen a ghost. Others lingered to stare and whisper, trying to process what they'd witnessed. Father Michael had attempted to restore order, but eventually gave up and dismissed everyone with a shell-shocked benediction. Now it was just family in the rectory behind the altar. Me, Lila, Mom, and Nathan, surrounded by the memorial flowers that were supposed to honor my passing. "This is impossible," Mom said, for the fourth time, pacing in small circles around Father Michael's desk. "I saw the police report. I spoke to the ranger who found your car. You've been missing for 6 days, Evelyn. Where have you been?" I stared at her, searching for any sign that she recognized the insanity of the situation. "Mom, I've been at my apartment. I've been going to work. I've been living my normal life. I haven't been missing." "But the police." "What police? Who reported me missing? When? I want to see this report." Mom looked helplessly at Lila, who sat composed in one of Father Michael's chairs, still wearing my dress, still playing her part perfectly. "I reported you missing when you didn't come home Sunday night. You'd said you were going hiking alone, which you never do. When Nathan said he hadn't heard from you either, I got worried." Nathan, who had been silent since my dramatic entrance, finally spoke. "You did go hiking Sunday. You left early in the morning. You said you needed to clear your head about the Morrison project." I turned to stare at him. "Nathan, I spent Sunday at home reading manuscripts. I made pasta for dinner and watched 3 episodes of that British mystery show you hate. You weren't there because you were working late again, but we texted about it. Check your phone."
He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. His face went white as he scrolled through his messages. "There's nothing here. No texts from Sunday. The last message I have from you is from Friday." The room spun slightly. "That's impossible. I texted you Sunday night asking when you'd be home." "Evelyn, honey," Mom said, her voice taking on that careful tone people use with the unstable. "Maybe you're confused. You've obviously been through something traumatic. Maybe you hit your head, or—" "I'm not confused." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I know what happened to me. I know what I did this week. I went to work Monday and Tuesday. I had lunch with Clara on Wednesday. I edited 3 chapters of the Holloway manuscript. I am not the one who's confused here."
Lila leaned forward slightly, her expression perfectly crafted to show concern mixed with sorrow. "Evelyn, we understand this is hard to accept. Sometimes when people experience trauma, their minds protect them by creating false memories. It's actually very common." "False memories?" I laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. "Lila, cut the act. I know what you've done. I found the obituary. I saw the GoFundMe page. $8,000? Really? Was faking my death not profitable enough? Or are you just greedy?" Mom gasped. "Evelyn Marie Hart, how dare you speak to your sister that way? She's been through hell this week thinking you were dead." "Has she?" I pulled out my phone and opened the GoFundMe page. Then why did she set up this fundraising page 6 hours before she supposedly reported me missing? According to the timestamp, she created this on Sunday at 2 p.m., but she just said she didn't report me missing until Sunday night when I didn't come home. The silence stretched between us like a wire about to snap. Lila's composure flickered for just a moment. "I was proactive. I knew something was wrong. I could feel it, the way twins do. I was trying to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." "That's bullshit, and you know it," I said. "Language, Evelyn," Mom snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. I could see doubt creeping into her eyes as she looked between her daughters. Nathan was staring at his phone, scrolling through something. He said slowly, "There are photos from the search and rescue operation. Your car at the trailhead, abandoned. The ranger's report says there were signs of a struggle." "Show me," I demanded. He turned his phone toward me and I saw images that made my blood freeze. My car, my actual car with my license plate, parked at the Franconia Ridge trailhead. The driver's door was open, my purse visible on the passenger seat. There was even what looked like torn fabric caught on a nearby tree branch. "That's not possible," I whispered. "My car is in my apartment building's parking lot. I drove it here today." "Evelyn, what car did you drive here?" I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. The car I'd driven to the church had been in my usual parking spot, with my keys, responding to my key fob. But now, looking at the photos, I realized I hadn't actually looked at the license plate. I just assumed. "We need to go to the parking lot. We need to check the car I drove here." "Honey, maybe we should call Dr. Peterson. You remember Dr. Peterson, right? He helped you through that difficult time in college when you were so stressed about—" "I'm not having a breakdown. I'm not crazy or confused or traumatized. Someone is playing an elaborate game and we're all being manipulated." I looked around the room, at Nathan's confused sympathy, at Mom's worried hand-wringing, at Lila's perfect mask of concern. They all thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. "Fine," I said, pulling my keys from my purse. "Let's settle this right now. We'll go look at the car I drove here, and we'll figure out whose it really is." But even as I said it, a cold certainty was creeping through me. Lila was too calm, too prepared. She had photos and police reports and worried relatives. She had built a perfect story around my absence, and now I was the crazy woman disrupting everyone's grief with wild accusations. As we walked toward the parking lot, I caught Lila hanging back slightly.
When I glanced over my shoulder, I saw her typing rapidly on her phone, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. Making arrangements, I realized. Covering her tracks. Preparing for whatever came next. The car in the parking lot looked exactly like mine, but when I checked the license plate, the numbers were different by 2 digits. Close enough to pass casual inspection, but definitely not my vehicle. "Whose car is this?" I demanded. "It's a rental. Evelyn, you rented it 3 days ago. Don't you remember? You said your car was making a strange noise." She pulled out her phone and showed me a rental agreement with my name on it, my signature, my credit card information. I stared at the document, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of real doubt. Because I didn't remember renting a car. I didn't remember my car making strange noises. And looking at that signature, it looked exactly like my handwriting. "I think," Mom said carefully, "we need to get you to a hospital, sweetheart, just to make sure you're okay, just to rule out any head injuries or other issues." As they led me toward the rental car that I apparently had signed for but couldn't remember, I felt my grip on reality starting to slip. What if I was the one who was wrong? What if I had been the one?
In an accident? Had suffered some kind of traumatic amnesia that was making me create false memories to fill in the gaps? But then I looked at Lila, walking slightly ahead of us, and I caught something in her reflection in the car window. She was smiling. Just for a moment, when she thought no one was looking, my grieving sister smiled. And I knew whatever was happening to me, whatever game was being played, Lila was the one holding all the cards. The emergency room doctor found nothing wrong with me except elevated blood pressure and what she diplomatically called acute stress. No head trauma, no signs of neurological damage, no explanation for why I couldn't remember renting a car or going hiking. They released me at midnight with a referral to a psychiatrist and Mom's promise to keep an eye on me. I spent the night at Mom's house, my childhood bedroom preserved like a shrine to my teenage years, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of what was happening. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lila at that pulpit, wearing my dress and my life like they belonged to her. The next morning, Clara arrived with coffee and a stack of printed papers. "I've been up all night researching," she said, spreading documents across Mom's kitchen table. "And I found some things that don't add up." She showed me the police report first. Officer Mark Reeves had filed it based on Lila's missing person report, but the timestamp showed he'd filed it at 9:47 p.m. on Sunday, nearly 2 hours before Lila claimed she'd called the police. "Look at this," Clara pointed to another document. "The search and rescue operation was organized Monday morning, but the team leader's notes mention pre-positioned equipment at the trailhead. Who pre-positions equipment for a search that was supposedly organized spontaneously?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Mom answered it, and I heard an unfamiliar male voice asking for me. Detective Adrian Vega was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes and the kind of methodical way of speaking that suggested he'd seen enough human deception to last several lifetimes. "Ms. Hart," he said, settling into one of Mom's dining room chairs, "I'm here because your case has been flagged for irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" Clara asked. Vega opened a manila folder. "Someone filed a death certificate for Evelyn Hart yesterday. But death certificates require a body, a coroner's report, or, at minimum, witness testimony of death. We have none of those things. We have a missing person report and an abandoned car, but no actual evidence of death." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly cried. "So you believe me? You believe I'm alive?" "I believe you're sitting in front of me," Vega said carefully, "but I need to understand what happened. The timeline doesn't make sense. According to official records, you were reported missing Sunday night, but your sister filed paperwork to have you declared dead Monday afternoon. That's unusually fast. She was preparing. She planned this. Viga studied me with those tired eyes. That's a serious accusation. If true, we're talking about fraud, identity theft, possibly insurance fraud, depending on what policies are involved. I need you to walk me through your week, day by day, starting last Sunday. I told him everything. My quiet Sunday at home, my work week, my normal routine. I showed him my work emails, my browser history, even the receipts from my coffee shop visits. Clara provided corroborating evidence, text messages between us, a selfie we'd taken at lunch Wednesday. This is helpful, Viga said, making notes. But I have to ask, is there any chance you could have had a dissociative episode? Memory gaps? Sometimes trauma can... Detective, Clara interrupted. Show him the GoFundMe page. Viga examined Clara's printouts, his expression growing more serious. This was created Sunday at 2 p.m., 6 hours before the missing person report was filed. Exactly, I said. She was setting up the infrastructure for my death before she even reported me missing. But here's what bothers me, Viga said. Your sister would have to be extraordinarily organized to pull this off. She'd need access to your personal information, your daily routines, your passwords. She'd need to coordinate with multiple agencies and services. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. The implication hung in the air like smoke. This had been planned for weeks, maybe months. There's something else, I said. The rental car. I have no memory of renting it, but apparently I did. If Lila somehow rented it using my identity...
I can check that, Vega said. Rental agencies have security cameras, verification procedures. If someone was impersonating you, there might be evidence. He closed his folder and looked at me seriously. Miss Hart, I want you to know that I'm taking this seriously. But I also need you to understand that if your sister has been planning this for an extended period, she's likely covered her tracks well. Building a case might take time. How much time? Clara asked. Weeks, maybe months. And in the meantime, Vega hesitated. In the meantime, legally speaking, you're in a complicated position. There are now conflicting official records about your status. Some say you're alive, some say you're dead. Until we sort this out, you might have trouble accessing your bank accounts, your job, your apartment lease. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Your sister has been acting as your next of kin since Sunday. She's had access to your affairs, your finances, your legal matters. If she's been methodical about this... He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. Lila hadn't just stolen my identity. She'd been actively dismantling my life, piece by piece, while I sat in my apartment completely unaware. I need to get to my bank, I said, standing abruptly. Miss Hart, Vega warned, I'd recommend being very careful about what actions you take right now. If your sister is monitoring your activities, and given the level of planning this appears to involve, I suspect she is, you don't want to tip her off that you're building a case against her. So what am I supposed to do? Just let her keep living my life? You're supposed to be smart, he said. Document everything. Save every piece of evidence. And whatever you do, don't confront her directly until we have enough proof to make charges stick. After Vega left, Clara and I sat in Mom's kitchen staring at the evidence spread across the table. Evie, Clara said quietly, I need you to ask you something, and I need you to really think about the answer. I nodded. In the past few months, have you noticed Lila paying more attention to your life, asking more questions about your routine, your relationship with Nathan, your work? I thought back, trying to remember. Lila and I never been particularly close as adults. We lived different lives, had different priorities.
But now that Clara mentioned it, she started coming around more. Maybe 3 months ago? She said she was trying to be a better sister, that she wanted us to be closer. She'd drop by my apartment, sometimes when Nathan was there. She'd ask about my work, my friends. I thought she was just growing up. What about your computer, your phone? Did you ever leave them unattended when she was around? The memory hit me like a physical blow. 2 months ago, Lila had visited while I was sick with food poisoning. I had spent most of the day in bed while she took care of me, bringing me soup and medicine. My laptop had been open on the kitchen table the entire time. "Oh God," I whispered. She had hours alone with my computer. All my passwords are saved, my email, my banking, everything. Clara reached across the table and took my hand. "We're going to figure this out, Evie. We're going to get your life back." But as I stared at the evidence of my sister's betrayal, I wondered if there would be anything left to get back. How do you reclaim an identity that someone else has been actively destroying? How do you prove you're alive when the world has already moved on from your death? And somewhere out there, Lila was probably sitting in my apartment, sleeping in my bed, living the life she'd murdered to steal. Clara's journalism background proved invaluable over the next 3 days. While I hid at Mom's house, afraid to return to my apartment, afraid to show my face in public where people might think they were seeing a ghost, Clara conducted what she called reconnaissance. She started with the obvious places: my bank, my workplace, my apartment building. What she found made my skin crawl. "She's been to your office," Clara reported, sitting cross-legged on my childhood bed with her laptop open. "I talked to Jessica from reception. She said you came in Tuesday morning to discuss taking emergency leave due to family crisis. She said you seemed different, quieter, more formal, but she attributed it to grief. She was setting up my absence," I realized, "making sure no one would expect to see me. It gets worse. I checked with your building manager. You gave notice on your apartment Monday evening, said you'd be moving out by the end of the month due to too many painful memories." I felt sick. My apartment, my sanctuary, the place I'd built my adult life, was being stolen from me in real time.
"And Nathan?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Clara's expression grew grim. "I followed him yesterday. He went to lunch with Lila. They held hands across the table, Evie. She's moved into your relationship so seamlessly that even Nathan doesn't seem to notice the difference." "How is that possible? We're identical, but we're not the same person. Nathan should be able to tell." "Should he?" Clara interrupted gently. "When's the last time you and Nathan had a real conversation? Not about his work or your work, but about your feelings, your dreams, your fears. When's the last time he looked at you, really looked at you, for longer than it takes to say good morning?" The truth hit like a slap. Nathan and I had been coasting for months, maybe longer. Our relationship had become comfortable, predictable, easy. We'd stopped seeing each other as individuals and started seeing each other as roles: fiancé, future wife, safe choice. It would be easy for someone to slip into that kind of relationship. All they'd need to do is play the part Nathan expected. "There's more," Clara said, pulling up something on her laptop. "I hacked into your email account. Sorry, but desperate times. And I found correspondence between you and a storage facility outside town. Someone rented a unit there last month using your credit card." She showed me the emails. My name, my card, my digital signature authorizing a monthly rental fee. "We need to see what's in that storage unit," I said. "Already on it. I called Detective Vega. He's meeting us there this afternoon with a warrant." The storage facility was one of those sprawling complexes on the outskirts of town, rows of identical metal buildings that looked like industrial graveyards. Vega was waiting by Unit 247 with a locksmith and another officer I didn't recognize. "Just so we're clear," Vega said as the locksmith worked on the padlock,
Anything we find here is evidence. No touching, no moving, no taking anything. We document first, investigate later. The lock clicked open, and Vega raised the metal door. Inside was my life in boxes. Not my possessions, my identity. Stacks of documents with my name on them. Photo albums from my childhood that I thought were safely stored at Mom's house. My passport, my social security card, my birth certificate, financial records going back years, even my college transcripts. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the other stuff. Driver's licenses with my photo but different names. Sarah Matthews, Rebecca Johnson, Marie Torres. All with my face, all with addresses I'd never lived at, all perfectly legitimate looking. She's been practicing, Vega said grimly, photographing each document, learning how to be you, but also creating escape identities. In one corner, Clara found a box labeled Nathan in handwriting that looked like mine, but wasn't quite right. Inside were copies of text messages between Nathan and me, printed photos of us together, even a key to his apartment. She's been studying your relationship, Vega observed, learning your patterns, your communication style, your history together. The most chilling discovery was a journal, bound in black leather, filled with pages of meticulous notes, written in Lila's real handwriting. Day 47. E mentions she and Nathan haven't been intimate in 3 weeks. Opportunity. Day 52. E always orders the same coffee. Memorized preferences for mimicking. Day 61. E leaves laptop open when sick. Downloaded browser history, saved passwords, full access achieved. Day 73. Nathan complained E has been distant lately. He's primed for someone more attentive. Page after page of observations, plans, calculations. My life reduced to data points in my sister's scheme. But the final entry made my blood freeze. Day 89. Tomorrow is implementation day. E's disappearance will be clean. Hiking accident, body never recovered. Grief will bond me and Nathan. Mom will need me to be strong. I won't just be living E's life. I'll be living the better version of it she was too timid to create. By Christmas, no one will remember there was ever any difference between us. This is dated last Saturday, Vega said, the day before you were reported missing. I stared at my sister's handwriting, at the cold calculation with which she'd planned to erase me. This wasn't a crime of passion or desperation. This was methodical, patient, utterly ruthless. There's something else, the other officer said from the back of the unit. He'd found a small safe, combination lock already open. Inside were financial documents that made my stomach turn.
Bank statements showing systematic transfers from my accounts to accounts I'd never opened. Insurance policies I'd never signed, with Lila listed as beneficiary. Even a will forged with my signature, leaving everything to my beloved sister. She's been stealing from you for months, Vega said. This isn't just identity theft. It's a complete financial takeover. She's drained your savings, opened credit lines in your name, even taken out a life insurance policy on you. How much? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Vega added up the figures on his calculator. Looks like about $40,000 so far, but with the life insurance policy, he showed me the number. $250,000. The policy Lila had taken out on my life, with herself as the beneficiary, would pay out $250,000 upon my death. She wasn't just stealing my identity, I whispered. She was planning to profit from my murder. Clara put her arm around me as I stared at the evidence of my sister's betrayal. All those months when I'd thought she was trying to be a better sister, she'd been systematically dismantling my life, studying me like a specimen, preparing to step into my skin. We have enough for arrests, Vega said. Fraud, identity theft, theft by deception, and given the life insurance policy, we can probably make a case for attempted murder. Probably? I asked. She'll claim it was all a misunderstanding,
that she thought you were really dead, that she was just trying to handle your affairs. Without direct evidence that she staged your disappearance, Vega shrugged. Good lawyers can create reasonable doubt. So what do we do? Vega looked at me seriously. We set a trap. We make her think she's won, and then we catch her in a lie she can't explain away. As we drove back into town, I wondered if I was strong enough for what was coming, because now I understood what I was really fighting against. This wasn't just about getting my life back. This was about surviving my sister's plan to erase me completely. Detective Vega's plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. I would stay hidden while he and Clara documented every move Lila made. The goal was to catch her actively living my life in ways that would be impossible to explain if she genuinely believed I was dead. She's gotten comfortable, Vega explained during our strategy meeting in his small, cluttered office. She thinks she's won. People get sloppy when they think they're safe. For the next week, I became a ghost in my own town. I stayed at a small motel outside the city limits, paid for with the one credit card Lila hadn't accessed, a business card in Clara's name that I'd been an authorized user on. Clara brought me updates daily, each one more disturbing than the last. She's redecorating your apartment, Clara reported on Tuesday. I saw her carrying in new throw pillows, artwork, even a different coffee table. She's not just living in your space, she's making it hers. What about Nathan? They're inseparable. I followed them to dinner at Marcello's, your favorite restaurant. She ordered your usual meal, Evie, down to the specific wine you always get. It's like watching someone wear your personality as a costume. Wednesday brought worse news. She went to your office again, not just to maintain appearances. She's actually working on your projects. Jessica showed me the edits she made to the Holloway manuscript. They're good edits, Evie. She knows your editorial style well enough to mimic it perfectly. By Thursday, I was ready to confront her directly, Detective Vega's warnings be damned. But that's when we got our first real break. Clara burst into my motel room at 7 a.m, laptop in hand, looking like she hadn't slept. She figured out how she's been funding all this, she said, pulling up bank records on her screen. Remember how she's been systematically draining your accounts? I traced where that money went. She showed me a complex web of transactions. My money had been moved through 3 different shell accounts before landing in an account under the name Sarah Matthews, one of the fake identities we'd found in the storage unit. But here's the interesting part, she continued. She's been using the Sarah Matthews account to pay rent on a second apartment across town. I drove by this morning. It's fully furnished, completely stocked, like a backup life. She's been preparing escape routes, I realized. More than that, I think she's been practicing. The apartment is set up exactly like yours. Same furniture arrangement, same decorations, even the same books on the shelves. It's like a rehearsal space where she could perfect being you without anyone watching. Detective Vega arrived an hour later with another warrant and a sense of urgency I hadn't seen before.
"We need to move fast," he said. "I just got word that your sister has scheduled an appointment with an estate attorney this afternoon. She's filing papers to officially inherit your assets as your sole surviving relative." The second apartment was in a building I'd never seen before, but walking into it felt like stepping into a funhouse mirror version of my life. Everything was familiar but wrong. My furniture arranged slightly differently. My photos displayed in frames that were similar but not quite right. My books organized by a system I'd never used. But it was the bedroom that made my skin crawl. On the dresser was a photo of Nathan and me from our engagement party, but Lila had carefully cut out my face and replaced it with her own. The editing was so seamless that if I didn't know better, I'd believe she'd been there that night instead of me. "Look at this," Vega called from the closet. Inside were multiple copies of my clothes. Not identical pieces, but close enough that someone who didn't know me intimately might not notice the difference. Blouses in the same style but slightly different fabric. Jeans in the same cut but a different wash. It was like she'd built a wardrobe that would let her play me without anyone realizing, and they'd never seen those specific clothes before. Clara found the real treasure trove in the bathroom medicine cabinet. Makeup organized to match my specific preferences, contact lenses in my prescription, even the exact shade of lipstick I always wore. "She's been studying you for months," Vega said, "learning not just your behavior patterns but your physical details. This level of preparation, it's obsessive." In the kitchen, we found meal plans written in Lila's handwriting, detailing my favorite foods, my dietary restrictions, even the specific way I liked my coffee prepared. It was like a manual for being me. But the most chilling discovery was in the living room, hidden behind a false back in one of the bookcases. Clara found it by accident, noticing that the shelf was shallower than it should be. Inside were surveillance photos of me, hundreds of them. Photos of me leaving my apartment, entering my office building, having lunch with Clara, kissing Nathan goodbye. Some were taken with a telephoto lens from across the street. Others looked like they'd been shot from inside buildings, close enough that she must have been following me directly. The photos were organized chronologically and annotated in Lila's handwriting. Notes about my routines, my relationships, my moods. E seems tired, working late on Morrison project. E and Nathan argued about wedding venue, tension opportunity. E bought new perfume, needs to be acquired for authenticity. "This is stalking," Clara said, her voice shaky. "She's been stalking you for months, documenting your entire life." But the final folder made everything else seem minor. It contained photos from inside my apartment, my bathroom, my bedroom, my kitchen, places where Lila shouldn't have been able to take pictures unless— "She copied your keys," Vega said grimly. "She's been in your apartment when you weren't there, studying your personal space, your private habits. The photos were time-stamped. She'd been inside my apartment at least a dozen times over the past 3 months, sometimes for hours at a time. While I was at work, while I was out with friends, even while I was asleep. There were photos of my bedroom taken in the middle of the night with me visible as a sleeping figure under the covers. I felt violated in a way I couldn't even articulate. My sister hadn't just stolen my life. She'd invaded my most private spaces, my most vulnerable moments, treating my life like a research project." "We have her," Vega said, photographing the evidence. "This level of premeditation, the financial fraud, the stalking, no lawyer in the world can spin this as a misunderstanding." But as Vega's phone rang, he answered with a sharp, "Vega." Then his expression grew dark. "When? Are you sure? Okay, we're on our way." He hung up and looked at us grimly. "Your sister just left the estate attorney's office. As of an hour ago, she's filed papers claiming full inheritance of your assets, but that's not the worst part." "What's the worst part?" asked Clara. "She's also filed a restraining order against you, claims you're an unstable individual who's been harassing her and her fiancé, impersonating her dead sister as part of a delusional episode." My blood went cold. Her fiancé? "She's claiming Nathan is engaged to her, not you. Says you've been stalking them both, showing up at their home, disrupting their grieving process. She has witness statements from your mother and Nathan supporting her claims." I sank into one of the chairs that looked like mine, but wasn't quite right. Lila hadn't just stolen my life. She'd poisoned everyone against me. Now if I tried to reclaim what was mine, I'd be the crazy woman harassing the grieving sister and her innocent fiancé. "She's good," I whispered. "She's really, really good." "Yes," Vega agreed, "but she made one mistake. She filed those papers before we found this apartment, which means she lied under oath about her knowledge of your activities and whereabouts. And lying under oath is perjury," Clara finished. "Exactly. And perjury is a felony we can prove." Vega's smile was sharp and predatory. "Your sister just gave us everything we need to destroy her."
But as we gathered the evidence and prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still missing something. Lila had been planning this for months, had anticipated every possible obstacle. Would she really have made such an obvious mistake? Or was this exactly what she wanted us to find? The restraining order arrived at my motel room via courier at 6 a.m., along with a court summons and a notice that I was being involuntarily committed for psychological evaluation. Petitioner claims that respondent has been impersonating her deceased twin sister, stalking her and her fiancé, and exhibiting signs of severe psychological disturbance, including delusional thinking and potential danger to self and others. I read the legal language with growing horror. Lila had beaten us to the punch. While we'd been gathering evidence against her, she'd been building a case that I was insane. The supporting documentation was devastating in its thoroughness. Witness statements from Mom describing my confused behavior at the memorial service, medical records from the hospital visit showing acute stress and disorientation, a statement from Nathan detailing my erratic text messages and inappropriate contact attempts. Even more damaging were the photos. Someone had been following me during my week at the motel, taking pictures that made me look unhinged. Me talking animatedly to myself outside a convenience store, though I'd actually been on a hands-free phone call with Clara. Me digging through trash behind my apartment building, though I'd only been retrieving mail that had blown out of my hands. Me standing outside Nathan's office building looking through the windows, though I'd only been trying to catch a glimpse of my own life. "She's been watching you watch her," Detective Vega said when I called him in a panic. "Every move you've made in the past week, she's documented and recontextualized to support her narrative." What do I do? If I don't show up to court, they'll issue a warrant. If I do show up, they'll lock me in a psychiatric facility. "You show up," he said firmly, "and you trust that the evidence we found will speak louder than her lies." The hearing was scheduled that afternoon in family court, a smaller, less formal setting that somehow made everything feel more intimate and more terrifying. I walked in wearing my most conservative outfit, Clara's idea, and found Lila sitting with a lawyer I didn't recognize. She'd styled herself to look like me, but a softer, more vulnerable version. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup, a navy dress that was professional but not threatening. She looked like the kind of woman who needed protection, not the kind who would destroy her sister's life for profit. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Evelyn, please, you need help. I know you're hurting, but this isn't the way." "Ms. Hart," the judge interrupted, "please save your statements for the appropriate time." Judge Patricia Morrison was a woman in her 60s with the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she'd heard every possible lie and manipulation in her courtroom. I found myself hoping she'd see through Lila's performance. Lila's lawyer presented their case first, a carefully constructed narrative of a grieving sister being terrorized by her twin's unstable behavior. They had photos, witness statements, even a recording of me screaming at my own memorial service, though they conveniently left out the context of why I'd been screaming. "Your Honor," the lawyer said, "my client has been through tremendous trauma, losing her twin sister in a tragic accident. Now she's being stalked and harassed by someone claiming to be that sister, someone who clearly needs psychiatric intervention." Mom testified via video call, looking frail and confused. "Evelyn has always been the more emotional twin. After what happened at the church, I think she's having some kind of breakdown. She needs professional help." Nathan's testimony was harder to watch. He looked genuinely torn, conflicted between loyalty and fear. "I love Evelyn, but the woman who came to my apartment last week, she wasn't herself. She was agitated, paranoid, saying things that didn't make sense. Lila has been so patient, so understanding. She's helping me get through this grief, and now she's being targeted by someone who looks like the woman we both lost."
When it was my turn to speak, I felt the weight of everyone's doubt pressing down on me. Even my own lawyer, a public defender who'd met me an hour before the hearing, seemed skeptical of my story. "Your Honor," I began, "everything you've heard today is based on a lie. I am Evelyn Hart. I am not dead, I am not delusional, and I am not stalking anyone. My sister has committed fraud, identity theft, and is actively stealing my life." I presented our evidence: bank records, the storage unit discoveries, the surveillance photos. But Lila's lawyer was ready for everything. "Your Honor, these documents appear to show someone with an intimate knowledge of both sisters' lives engaging in identity theft, but they don't prove which sister is the perpetrator. Given the respondent's clear psychological disturbance, isn't it more likely that she is the one who has been stealing her sister's identity, possibly as part of a delusional episode?" It was brilliant and terrifying. They'd taken our evidence and flipped it, making me look like the criminal instead of the victim. But then Detective Vega took the stand. "Your Honor, I've been investigating this case for 2 weeks. I've interviewed both women extensively, reviewed financial records, and examined physical evidence. In my professional opinion, the woman sitting at the defendant's table is Evelyn Hart, and the woman claiming to be her sister has committed multiple felonies in the course of stealing her identity." Lila's lawyer objected. "Detective Vega has no expertise in psychological evaluation. He can't determine someone's mental state or identity." "But I can determine criminal activity," Vega replied, "and I can tell you that someone has been systematically defrauding banks, insurance companies, and government agencies. Someone has been stalking, surveilling, and impersonating someone else for months. The question isn't whether these crimes occurred. The question is who committed them." Judge Morrison looked between me and Lila, her expression unreadable. "This is highly unusual," she said finally. "I have 2 women, both claiming to be the same person, both with evidence supporting their claims. I have a detective saying one has committed crimes, and a family saying the other is mentally ill." She paused, studying us both. "However, I note that one woman is asking for psychiatric commitment of the other, while the other is asking for criminal prosecution. That suggests very different motivations." Her gaze settled on Lila. "Ms. Hart, if you genuinely believe this woman is your mentally ill sister, why are you not seeking treatment for her rather than punishment?" Lila's composure flickered for just a moment. She's dangerous, Your Honor. She's been threatening me, stalking my fiancé." "But you still claim to love her?" "Of course, but—" "Then explain to me why your first instinct was to file for inheritance of her assets rather than to get her medical help." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Lila's lawyer whispered something urgently in her ear. "Your Honor, my client was simply trying to handle her deceased sister's affairs responsibly, while simultaneously claiming that sister is alive and harassing her." Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. "You can't have it both ways, counselor." I felt the first spark of hope I'd had all day. "Here's what I'm going to do," Judge Morrison continued. "I'm ordering both women to submit to DNA testing, fingerprinting, and comprehensive background checks. I'm also ordering Detective Vega to expand his investigation to include all financial and legal documents filed by either party in the past 6 months. She looked directly at Lila. "If you are who you claim to be, you should have no problem proving it. And if the evidence shows that you have been filing false legal documents or committing fraud—" She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. As we filed out of the courtroom, Lila grabbed my arm. "You should have stayed dead," she whispered so quietly only I could hear. "This isn't over." "You're right," I whispered back. "It isn't. But now everyone's watching. Now you have to be perfect every single day, and we both know you're not that good." For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real fear in my sister's eyes. The counterattack had begun. The DNA results came back 3 days later. Inconclusive. Identical twins, identical DNA. But Detective Vega had been busy during those 3 days, and what he found changed everything. "The rental car," he said, spreading photos across his desk. "Your sister was careful, but not perfect.
The agency has security footage of the person who rented it using your identity.
The timestamp showed Sunday at 1:47 p.m., just 13 minutes after Lila had created the GoFundMe page. In the grainy footage, I watched my sister walk into the rental office wearing my clothes, carrying my purse, moving with my mannerisms. But here's the smoking gun, Vega continued, pulling up another file. She used your credit card to rent the car, but she signed the paperwork with her own handwriting patterns. I had a forensic handwriting analyst compare it to known samples. The analysis was damning. Despite Lila's attempts to mimic my signature, subtle differences in pressure, letter spacing, and stroke patterns betrayed her. She'd been so focused on the visual appearance that she'd forgotten handwriting was as unique as fingerprints. We also traced the life insurance policy, Vega added. She forged your signature on the application, but the medical exam was done by someone 5 pounds lighter than you and with a small scar on her left shoulder from childhood surgery. Your medical records show no such scar. Clara burst through the office door, laptop in hand, practically vibrating with excitement. I found her mistake, the big one we've been waiting for. She pulled up a social media post on her screen. Lila's Facebook account, posted the morning after my memorial service. A single photo of her and Nathan holding hands with the caption, "Thank you all for your support during this difficult time. Evelyn would want us to find happiness together." Look at the metadata, Clara said. This photo was taken 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks before I was supposedly dead. She was so eager to play the grieving sister finding comfort that she used an old photo. The timestamp was undeniable. Lila had been cultivating a relationship with Nathan, positioning herself as my replacement weeks before staging my death. Vega smiled grimly. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. Premeditation. She's been planning this for months. Within hours, we had warrants. Lila was arrested at my apartment, the apartment she had given notice on, the life she had been methodically dismantling. When they found her, she was packing my jewelry into boxes labeled for storage. The arrest was almost anticlimactic. No dramatic confrontation, no tearful confession. Lila simply looked at the officers with cold calculation and said, "I want my lawyer." But as they led her away in handcuffs, she turned back to me one last time. "You'll never get it all back," she said quietly. "No matter what happens to me, you'll never get it all back. They'll always wonder which one of us is real." The trial lasted 4 weeks and became a media sensation. The twin identity theft case dominated local news, with reporters camping outside the courthouse trying to get photos of the real Evelyn Hart. The prosecution built their case methodically. Financial records showed the systematic draining of my accounts. The storage unit evidence revealed months of planning. Surveillance footage from various locations showed Lila's careful study of my routines. But the most powerful testimony came from Nathan. "I should have known," he said, his voice barely audible in the packed courtroom. "There were signs. She was more attentive than Evelyn usually was, more interested in my work, more affectionate. I thought grief had changed her, made her want to cherish what we had." He looked directly at me, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have known." Clara's testimony was fierce and unwavering. She detailed years of Lila's manipulative behavior, her jealousy of my stability, her constant schemes and lies. Lila has always wanted what Evelyn had, but she was never willing to do the work to build her own life. Mom's testimony was the hardest to watch. Frail and confused, she kept looking between me and Lila as if she still couldn't tell us apart. "I just wanted both my daughters to be happy," she whispered.
I don't understand how it came to this. Lila's defense team tried to paint her as a grieving sister driven to desperate measures by finding my twins' car abandoned and bloody. They argued that all her actions had been motivated by genuine belief that I was dead, combined with the trauma of loss. But the timeline didn't support their narrative. Too many pieces of evidence showed premeditation, planning that began weeks before my supposed death. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts: identity theft, fraud, stalking, conspiracy, and attempted insurance fraud. As the verdict was read, Lila showed no emotion. She sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead, looking more like a statue than a person. At sentencing, Judge Morrison was blunt. This was not a crime of passion or desperation. This was a calculated, systematic attempt to erase another person's existence for financial gain. The defendant showed no remorse, no recognition of the profound violation she committed against her own sister.
7 years in prison with restitution ordered for all stolen funds. As they led her away, Lila finally looked at me. There was no anger in her eyes anymore. No manipulation, just a cold, empty stare that made me shiver. "See you in 7 years, sister," she said. It's been 6 months since the trial ended, and I'm slowly learning how to be myself again. The practical pieces were surprisingly easy to rebuild. Banks reversed the fraudulent transactions. My employer welcomed me back with understanding and support. My apartment lease was restored, though I eventually decided to move somewhere new. Too many shadows lingered in those rooms. The emotional pieces are harder. Nathan and I tried to rebuild our relationship, but the foundation had been shattered. How do you trust someone who couldn't tell the difference between you and your imposter? How do you love someone who grieved you so briefly before moving on? We ended our engagement quietly, with sadness, but also relief. "I fell in love with the idea of you," he admitted during our final conversation. "I never really saw you clearly enough to tell when someone else was wearing your face." Mom and I are working through things slowly, with the help of a family therapist. She struggles with guilt over believing Lila's lies, over not recognizing her own daughter's deception. Some days are better than others. Clara remains my anchor, my proof that some relationships survive even the most devastating betrayals. "You're more yourself now than you were before," she told me recently. "It's like Lila stealing your life forced you to figure out who you really are underneath all the routines and expectations." She's right. The woman who stumbled across her own obituary 6 months ago was sleepwalking through life, letting others define her worth, accepting comfort over authenticity. The woman writing these words knows exactly who she is and what she's worth. I've started a support group for identity theft survivors. It's surprising how many people have experienced some version of what I went through. Maybe not as extreme, but the violation is similar. The confusion about who you are when someone else has been speaking in your name. Recovery isn't about getting your old life back. It's about building a life that's so authentically yours that no one could ever steal it. I keep Lila's prison letters unopened in a drawer. Every few weeks, another one arrives, her handwriting on the envelope, my name written in letters that look almost like mine, but not quite. I don't know what she writes about, and I don't want to know. That chapter of my life is closed. My apartment is on the 3rd floor of a building across town, with large windows that let in morning light. I wake up each day knowing exactly who I am, exactly what I've survived, exactly what I'm worth. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm alive, I'm free, and my life belongs to me. No one can steal what you refuse to give away. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.